And we get started, brother, with the latest NFL mock drafts. We both were scouring the internet this morning, and we found some information that gets you excited. Even though you can't really trust what you see in a mock draft this early on, but just some of the things that me and you saw today was enough to get you excited about the different possibilities that the Cleveland Browns have. Seeing that they hold the very first pick of day two in their draft, and we're gonna get into some of those today. So, what was one that really stood out to you?
Well, I think just think about the options. It's fun just to think about the options that we have. It's not fun to be in this position because
Mhm.
that means you we won 3 games last year.
Yeah,
Um, but it's fun to be in the position because there's a lot of good players at the top of the draft, even from the second round, third round. Now it's time to find those gems, and hopefully Andrew Berry and company can figure out who's the right fit for what they have going on. The one thing that filled my mind, honestly, that caught my attention, the mock draft, excuse me, was the Field Yates one from
hmm
ESPN. And actually, it's going to be on the flagship show right after us. So make sure you check in right after us. The flagship show, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, is going to be hot on that Field Yates mock draft. At number two, Abdul Carter,
hmm
which me and you talked on Saturday, I believe, 92.3. I was a little confused on that. But if you go that route, Field Yates has number 33, Tyler Show from Louisville. And he's an intriguing prospect. I heard Sean King talk about him on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I heard him talk about his height, his weight, the traits that he has, that he is NFL ready, that he's been coached by some really good guys. And I'm interested to see how he does. I know he had a good Senior Bowl. He had a good combine. But is he the guy that you'll go with at 33? If you look to me, if you're going for a quarterback at 33, I'm not sure um, Tyler would be the guy. For me, if I'm going for a quarterback, might want to. If I go Carter at two, I might want to trade back into the first round and try to find somebody there, whether that's Dart or Shedeur or whoever is left, right? If those guys are gone, I guess those guys would be the big three when you look at it. Cam probably be gone, and then Shedeur and Dart probably the big three, and then Tyler be the fourth guy, if I'm assuming. So if he's there at 33, I guess, but I'm big on the other guys. So if you can go get up one of those and back in the first round and get one of them, I think that'd be great. Um, Abdul Carter's interested in that too. He still has a foot injury. He's still fighting that foot, right? On paper, him and Miles together, it would be scary. And honestly, he looks, and it's not because of his number or because he went to Penn State. He looks similar to Micah Parsons, right? He does. As an athletic build, the way he gets after the pass rush is very similar. I just don't know if that's the best thing for the Browns. Too. I'm just not sold on that yet, Earl. You talk to me. I'm just not. I'm just not sold on that.
So it's funny because Tyvis made a compelling argument yesterday that Travis Hunter should be the pick at two, and I told Mike, I said I felt like, man, he had like a bug in our office because I had literally talked about this same scenario, and I think me and you talked about this last Saturday when I hosted on 92.3 The Fan. I have no issues with Abdul Carter whatsoever. I think Abdul Carter is a generational type of talent, but Abdul Carter is one of many pass rushers in this draft that can have an immediate
Mm.
impact. And when you talk about draft strength and draft weaknesses per position, that particular position has more strength than I think any other position group in the NFL draft this year. And so knowing that there's so many pass rushers that you can get in the second round that can step in opposite of Myles Garrett or just to be a part of that group, it's like, okay, yeah, Abdul is intriguing, but it's more guys that's similar to Abdul than it's not. And when you look at a guy like Travis Hunter, a lot of these draft experts have him as the number one overall wide receiver and was considered to be a weak class. We had Jordan Reed on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show yesterday, and he had the name Justin Jefferson in his mouth when comparing him being Travis Hunter, to a current NFL wide receiver. And then when you look at what he gives you on the defensive side of the ball, he's a lockdown corner. People talk about his frame and his size all the time, but the man is 6 feet, 6'1", depending on who doing the measurements. And he's somewhere between 175, 180 pounds. He's not the biggest dude in the world, but he's a young man and he's going to gain some weight. He's going to gain some muscle mass as his career progresses. But as we look at a lot of these mock drafts that we're seeing right now, I seen two today, one of them on NFL.com, and it had us taking Abdul Carter at number 2 overall. And then the second one I seen was behind a paywall. This one was on The Athletic, and it also had us taking Abdul Carter at number 2 overall. So it seems like the consensus across the board when you look at these different websites and you talk to these different experts is the Browns are going to take Abdul Carter with the second overall pick. That wouldn't be the player that I would draft, but if the Browns did it, how can you really get mad at the pick being Abdul Carter, right? Like if it was me and you were going non-quarterback in this situation, I'm definitely going Travis Hunter. I think it's somebody that you plug in right away next to Jerry Jeudy. And then if you had to, for whatever reasons, you can plug in right next to Denzel Ward. I think it also makes Greg Newsome more expendable. If you was to draft for Travis Hunter, I think that you can possibly work out a trade if you know you're not going to resign Greg Newsome and get a player that you might be able to keep in Cleveland for another 2 or 3 years. So I just think it gives you some flexibility, which you can do with other players on the roster. And then you get a true two-way dynamic player. You know, you hear the comps to Champ Bailey and Charles Woodson, but they had packages on the opposite side of the ball. This dude legit played both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, the pick at 2 would be Travis Hunter. But if it is Abdul Carter, I have no issue with that. I think as we move on, this is where things started to get interesting. And I think, you talked about Tyler already. I want to start with what I seen behind a paywall on The Athletic. And this particular mock draft had the Cleveland Browns trading back up into the first round to select tackle Josh Simmons from Ohio State. And see, so you can kind of read that real quick as I get this publication up and talk to the people, because it's funny, you and I talked about Josh Simmons being a possibility for the Browns at 33, and this year has them trading up to grab him back in the first round.
This is interesting because I believe in this mock draft that has Abdul going 2, correct, and then trading back up for Simmons at 26. Which honestly, this combination I love, and I'm gonna tell you why I love it. If you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, the reason why they won the Super Bowl the way they did, because they dominated the defensive line and they dominated the offensive line. It's that simple. They're in it to win it every single year. They're in a competitive, and they're in the NFC Championship or in a contention to get to the Super Bowl because they dominate both sides of the line of scrimmage. Same thing with Kansas City. Same thing with San Francisco. Same things with the Detroit Lions. Numerous good football teams, they dominate on both sides of the football, period. So when you make this move, this is telling me, okay, you're serious about getting better as a pure football team. You hit the offensive side, you hit the defensive side. You traded up. You probably got to trade that 33 pick, I'm assuming, to the Rams in this situation to be able to get this guy. But he can be a guy that competes for the left tackle spot ASAP. Big physical guy, long arms, moves his feet well, great technique. He played in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is known for offensive linemen. They're known for going against tough competition when it comes to the defensive line as well. So to have him, somebody's going to be a dog in that room. And it doesn't really matter whoever your quarterback is, they will be protected with him being there. I think that's a huge pickup and a great idea. I love that mock draft from The Athletic.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Simmons, man, he addresses an immediate need. When you look at the tackle position as it stands right now, you got Conklin, who's an older veteran who probably has a year or two left in his NFL career. Based on the injuries and just age. And then you have the uncertainties in DeJuan Jones. And I think DeJuan Jones, from what all I've heard, Jay Crawford ran into him about a month or so ago and said the man looked really, really good. And so I think if you drafted Josh Simmons, it gives you more depth at the offensive on the offensive line, more depth at the tackle position, and then you can start preparing yourself to revamp this line in the future. And you talk about the trench play. You mentioned like this would tell you that the Cleveland Browns are serious about winning. If anybody can recall how the Cleveland Browns addressed the NFL draft last year, they went Mike Hall Jr. and Zach Zinter, right, with their first 2 picks. And so they pretty much address the trenches the same way. And I remember when Tyvis actually sat down with Kevin Stefanski after the NFL draft, and he asked him why the picks were what they were with those first two selections, and he said, football is won and lost at the line of scrimmage and the trenches, and you hear G. Bush say it all the time. A tackle is not the most sexiest pick, but at the same time, it's an impactful pick. Like, I mean, we talk about guys like Travis Hunter who played the same position as you. You can't get the ball if your quarterback ain't got time to get it to you. So,
Right.
That's something that you got to look at. Now, we seen another publication, and this is one that I think could get people way more excited than Josh Simmons. If you're not like a football nerd, a guru, if you those guys right there, you love to pick of an offensive lineman, especially if you can trade back up and then you pretty much just give up pick 33 in a later round pick. This is a scenario right here, though, that I think will get people in the city of Cleveland excited. I think this is what will sell tickets. This will restore faith a little bit more than I think Abdul Carter and a Josh Simmons comparison. I seen this on NFL.com this morning. They had the Cleveland Browns trading back up into the first round with the Minnesota Vikings
Now we
to
talking.
draft Shedeur Sanders. And this is Lance, I think, Zierlein from NFL.com. Sorry, I didn't butcher his name, but this is from April 1st, 3:04 p.m. And it has the Cleveland Browns trading back up again to take Shedeur Sanders, pick number 24. And, I looked at Mike today when I seen this, and I told Mike, I said, that will be the one that made the most sense, because if you look at the Minnesota Vikings general manager, he is the former vice president of football operations here. And so him and Andrew Berry has that relationship. And, when you look for trade partners and you're trying to make a move, this business is built on the back of relationships. And so just to see the Vikings as a possible trade candidate, to me, it said, okay, if Shedeur, for whatever reason, was to fall in this draft, like some people project that he does, then now you talking, right? Now you might have something. And I don't think people will be opposed to Shedeur at 24. Like those same people that's opposed to Shedeur Sanders at 2, I don't think they will be opposed to Shedeur Sanders at 24. And then a lot of those men and women are people that's in the camp of Abdul Carter. So you get arguably the best pass rusher in the draft, and you get what most believe is the second overall quarterback prospect in this draft. So I guess, like, which scenario would you like most now that you've seen both? Both of them.
You know I'm high on Shedeur. I personally want the Browns to go Shedeur at 2. But if you go Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at 2, either or, if you go non-quarterback at 2, and then for whatever the reason Shedeur falls, which is a legit thing, he may fall, right? Say the Browns don't draft him at 2, and say New York Giants don't love him at 3 because they got Jameis and Russell for whatever the reason, right? And he gets past the Jets and gets past the Raiders, then hey, I think it's time to make some moves. That would be amazing, because I think everybody, like you mentioned, everybody will be okay with Shedeur in the 20s. I think the issue is, hey, he doesn't have the traits to be at the quote unquote elite caliber at number 2. I think that's the issue everybody has. But at 24, and I'll tell you how scouts look at it. We talked about this before. I've heard scouts and GMs and K coaches say numbers 21 through 50 or 60, whatever it is, they view as the same. They view as the same like scale pretty much. Like they all view them as the same mark as talent. So if you can get that 5th year on Shedeur at number 20, whatever it was, I think you're in really, really good shape. My only issue is the Steelers are at 21. I would hate for Shedeur Sanders to go to Pittsburgh for some type of way. And
Boom, Dawg just brought it up.
And we have to see him twice a year. I would hate that, because he would fit well with Mike Tomlin. He would fit well with that culture. He would fit well there. But going back to the Browns, I think that would be awesome. This is my favorite scenario. You get Abdul, you get Shedeur, you had your quarterback, because now you got somebody to throw the ball to. Now you got somebody to move around with. In the other mock draft, it was 2 linemen, great, but you still got Kenny Pickett as of right now. You still got Kenny Pickett there to throw Jerry Jeudy and who else the football, right? We're not even sure what else they'll do in the draft. So that's my favorite by far. I love me some Shedeur, man. So I think he can be somebody that's really, really, really good for the franchise and somebody that Cleveland would back, especially at in the 20s range.
Yeah, so we seen some comments in here, and a couple of them that I do want to address. You already talked about the one about Pittsburgh being a possibility of drafting him, and I think that as the draft shapes up, you do want to see what these other teams that's quarterback needy will do, because I think even if Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers, it still makes sense for them to draft the Shedeur Sanders, right? And so the Saints is another team that I think people are not talking
New
about enough.
Orleans.
But New Orleans is another team that you got to look at and say, okay, they might look at this and say, okay, I need to draft a quarterback.